Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some malicious compliance. Before we start, if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It's completely free and you can always change your mind later. But if you stick around, there just might be some tasty cookies in your near future. Alright, our first story today comes to us from Graveyard Pixie. No vacation or PTO until October? Okay, I'm taking all of October off. Let's jump right in. Something happened at my husband's work last night that reminded me of this decade-old story. For context, at the time, my husband worked overnights at one of the largest supermarket operators in North America. I was about 6 months pregnant, and the store he worked in had a change in who the store manager was. And when I went shopping, I used either a wheelchair or a scooter with a card on it due to a disability that makes it difficult for me to walk under normal circumstances. Background: originally, we had felt pretty lucky that between all the pregnancy tests I had done to confirm that yes, I am in fact pregnant. And at the ultrasound, the earliest and latest due date we had been given all fell in the first week of September. So my husband had planned to use one of his weeks of vacation that week, and then use his paternity leave after that week so he would be able to be there while I was at the hospital in recovery, and for the first days of our baby's life. His boss seemed genuinely confused by the request. He was 22, single, and called his truck his baby, but had said something along the lines of, "Hey man, it's your vacation, you should use it how you want to." Then, about a week later, I came home from one of my doctor's appointments to a message on the answering machine saying, "Unfortunately, I have to deny your request for a vacation and paternity leave in September, as someone with more seniority has put in for those days off as well. I hope this doesn't cause problems between you and your wife." I burst into tears on the spot, but my husband said he'd go talk to the person who had requested those days off, explained that he had asked for that time off because it's when the baby is due, and see if he could offer them something to give him those days off instead. Unfortunately, it was one of his coworkers who was going to have major surgery and needed that time off to recover, so we couldn't ask him to trade vacation weeks for us. My husband put in for time off in the second week of September and is denied. Then he tries the third week and is denied again. But this time, his boss tells him that he won't be able to use any of his vacation time until October due to his position and who has time off. Cue the malicious compliance. We realized that because this boss was new, he probably didn't realize that my husband had been saving all his vacation days, PTO, and paternity leave. When we added up all the time, it amounted to 3 weeks of time off. And if we worked it around to start around when his days off were, he would be able to be home with the baby from October 1st until November 9th. His coworkers on the night crew and several of his friends on the morning crew felt that he had been seriously shafted by the new boss, so they got in on this plan with us. We waited until the boss's day off, and that's when my husband put in the schedule for the time off he was requesting, which was approved by the scheduling manager and the night crew manager. This was in July, so the only thing left to do was wait. Our baby was born in the early hours of the morning, about 2 days before our earliest due date, after 29 hours of stage 2 and 3 labor. I ended up having an induction due to the fact I had been in early stage labor since the beginning of August, and it just wasn't progressing. When my husband called the night shift manager to say that I was going to the hospital to give birth, he told my husband to call in if he was going to miss any more days of work, and they would make sure it got covered. It wasn't PTO, but it was considered an excused absence. After I came home from the hospital, my mom started staying overnight with us temporarily to help out preparing meals, taking care of the dog and the household chores, so I could focus on taking care of myself and the baby. That first month home was pretty rough, so I was relieved when October rolled around and I finally had his help 24/7, and my mom was able to take a break. The aftermath. First up was the 3 days of paternity leave. On the morning of the 5th day of his 40-day long vacation, the boss woke me up at 6 a.m. wanting to talk to my husband. I told him he was feeding the baby and asked why he was calling. He said he was checking in to see why my husband no-call no-showed the night before, And I said sarcastically, "Oh no, that's terrible. I'll go get him for you." I put the phone on speaker so my husband can talk to his boss while he's feeding the baby, so I get to hear everything. The boss very smugly informed my husband that his paternity leave was over, and since he didn't come in the night before, he would be written up for a no-call, no-show. My husband said, "Yes, I know my paternity leave is over, but my first vacation week started last night." First vacation week? Yeah, I have 3. I was going to use one in September, one in October, and one in November, but since you told me I couldn't use any PTO until October, I decided to just take all of October off to be with my wife and newborn. I'll call you back after I look into this. I don't know how I managed to stay silent and not laugh at this conversation, but somehow I did. We got a call back later that day, and it went something like this. "Yeah, I'm gonna need you to come into work tonight. I never would have approved your request for time off if I knew you were taking the whole month off." You didn't approve it. The night manager and scheduling manager both approved this, so I'm not coming in tonight. Clearly thinking this is a gotcha moment, "I didn't approve it, and I need you to come in tonight, so you'll be here at 10 on your regular schedule for the rest of the month, or you'll be written up." No, I won't. I submitted the request in July, and you never denied my request. It's been approved by the other managers, and it's already started, so it's too late for you to deny it now. I'll call you back. After that, my husband called the union steward to confirm that he was in the clear, and they say that he is. We got another call the following Sunday, which was my husband's next day off, asking if he would be coming in that night since he wasn't listed as being on vacation in the system. Am I on the schedule? No. Then it's my night off, so no. He hung up after that. But we got a call like that every night my husband wasn't on the schedule due to it being one of his regular days off and him not being marked as being on vacation in the system. Some of the ladies in the bakery and deli section of the store put together a card shower for us and gave them gift cards since we never said anything to them about when my baby shower was or where we were registered. Oops. Later that week, I made a trip into the store one afternoon to pick up some stuff and introduce them to the baby, and my mom came along too. While we were over there, the store manager came up and said, "You must be husband's wife." I was feeling petty, so I pointed out that we would have met sooner if he didn't have a habit of running away and hiding in his office when customers approached him. I don't know if that irritated him or if he was planning on saying this next anyway, but the next words out of his mouth were, "You don't look like you need help with the baby. Husband said he was taking time off to help you with the baby because you have a disability, but I guess you don't need it, huh?" The bakery deli ladies glared at him, and my mom went pale because she knows I usually react very strongly to those comments. But my mom also raised me to be civil and mannerly, so I just smiled and said, "I hope you don't speak to your employees like that. That can get you fired, bless your heart." And one of his employees told him I was right, so he sulked off. He seemed so desperate to find any reason he could to force my husband to come back to work before the end of the month. I started wondering if he was being petty and might try to retaliate after my husband came back to work, or if he was just desperate. So I called one of my husband's coworkers. Remember when I said new boss was 22? Well, he also had a habit about bragging about how he started working for the company as a cashier when he was 17, and worked his way up to management in just 5 years. At some point after the baby was born, district came and did a walkthrough, and it turned out his dad was the district manager, and he didn't work his way up to management, he was a Nepo baby. That burned bridges with more than a few employees. Then he turned up in a brand new truck and said with the year-end bonus he was going to get, he could pay it off in one go. Several employees walked, including 2 on the night crew. Since my husband was on paternity leave, he had to work overnights to make up the slack. He'd never showed up to cover overnights when they were short-handed before that, so we figured he was desperate to get my husband to come back because working overnights was cutting into his dating time. Finally, the end of my husband's vacation time came, and his boss called again. "You used up your paternity leave and your vacation weeks. You're coming in tonight, right?" No, I still have PTO days left this year, and since I won't be able to use them all between November and the end of December, and they don't roll over into next year, I decided to take them now. Well, when are you coming back to work? November 10th. Boss called back the next day to tell my husband that actually he had used up his paternity leave while he was at the hospital giving birth, so he would have to use PTO to cover that. And actually he had used a week of PTO when he took me to the hospital with fake labor. So actually he would be coming back to work on November 1st. My husband called the union steward and filed a complaint that his boss was retroactively deciding what counted as paternity leave and what counted as PTO, and trying to force him to use PTO days to cover days where he either went in late or left a couple of hours and then came back and stayed late to make up the missed hours. He went in to fill out some paperwork and we didn't hear from his boss again between then and when he got replaced at the end of the following January. OP added a quick edit onto the end of the story. It says, edit. To clarify some questions in the comments regarding FMLA, we didn't use it. This was us cashing in all of my husband's vacation he had for the year, as well as PTO days. We think in total it was 29 days. Plus, 3 days paternity leave we stretched to 40 by only applying for time off on the days he was actually scheduled to work. At the time, the company only offered 3 days paid paternity leave. I don't recall how much they offered unpaid or the total amount though, so we decided to just use the paid days since my parents were close by. As for why we put up with the calls coming in for so long, simply put, we were both exhausted, and as much as we wanted him to stop calling period, we didn't want to offend him since neither of us knew how long he'd be there. We had expected him to be gone in 3 months like most of the other rotating cast of store management had been, so when he stayed longer than that, we decided it was just easier to deal with him long enough to enforce a boundary. It was really interesting to read through the comments on this one and see the different amounts of parental leave that are allowed depending on the country that you live in. Apparently in the USA, it's actually some of the worst amounts of parental leave that you can get. 3 days is absolutely ridiculous. Now, I don't remember exactly what it is up here in Canada where I am, but I know I was able to split the time off with my wife however we wanted to do it for a period of 12 months, I believe. So I could have taken 3 months, she could have taken 9. I believe in Germany there's 14 months of parental leave that can be divided up between the parents as well. It just baffles me that they don't have something like this in the US. Now, did you notice that part where they said, bless your heart? Isn't that the polite southern way of saying, well, ain't you a pretty little dumb thing? Alright, our next story today comes to us from Meekly Enthusiasm. Entire class skips optional early start to lab. We were given an hour for lunch and we're going to take all of our time. Let's jump right in. I'm a second-year veterinary student. This is the time when we start our live surgery labs. We work in teams of 3 students, a surgeon, an assistant, and an anesthetist, and are absolutely overseen by certified specialists, anesthesiologists, and surgeons, and many experienced vet nurses as well. We have lectures 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. Lunch is 11 to 12. Our lab begins at 12 p.m. sharp. However, we were told we have the option to come to lab early and begin. It became very clear after the first week, this is an expectation, not an option, that we will skip lunch or eat during lecture and come straight to the OR. During one lab at 11:50 a.m., the anesthesiologist yelled at a student for a few minutes in the pharmacy area while getting drugs for lab for not having his patient ready and waiting in the induction room, 10 minutes before lab even begins. And this group was set to induce during the last wave, normally 1 to 1.5 hours into lab. There's no reason to be an hour early when your group is final wave. Being on time is sufficient, and they were actually still early. Our class has been getting berated by this anesthesiologist, as well as some of the surgeons in this lab. Just as one example, a student surgeon asked for help. A surgical resident came over from another patient to help, and she was now not sterile. The resident told the student she was holding her forceps wrong, proceeded to grab them from her hands, and then made the student leave her patient on the table to re-scrub, re-gown, and re-glove, and open a new instrument pack, all because she wanted to ask a question. This is common technique they will use on us when we've done something incorrect to get us to remember it next time. Well, the entire class is fed up with this. Our class called a meeting about it, and we all decided we are all going to start showing up to lab at 11:50 to 11:55 a.m., only 5 to 10 minutes early. Not for petty reasons either, but it's a matter of patient safety as well. Several students have fainted from skipping lunch to go and operate instead. We were given 11 to 12 for lunch, and we were going to take all of our time. So that's what we did. At 11:40 a.m., one of the surgeons came to our lecture hall where the majority of us stay and eat lunch, and asked us why we're not in lab yet. A student at the front of the room said simply, "Lab begins at 12 noon. The surgeon gave us a long spell about professionalism and how we are being inappropriate and putting our patients at risk, and she left. The OR is a 2-minute walk from the lecture hall, so we finished lunch and all showed up around 11:55. The clinicians were very mad about it and reported our class to the dean, and so the dean called a school-wide meeting about it. Some of our classmates spoke eloquently about our reasons and our actual patient safety concern, turning it right back on the clinicians, citing patient safety. And the school claims to care immensely about student mental health, since this profession has one of the highest suicide rates, and our own class even suffered a loss. And cutting our break and lunch is no way to support us. Beyond that, the schedule says we begin at 12, and we are still showing up a few minutes early to ensure we can begin right at 12. Ultimately, the dean just released a statement saying they cannot force us to begin lab an hour early, and we will start at 12 when the dean's office scheduled lab to begin. It's a small win for us. Certainly we will face backlash, but we will have a break to eat at least. Our class is known for not putting up with BS from the school. We got a dinosaur of a professor fired for comments she made to a student in the middle of a lecture, after she had terrorized students at this school for decades. She forgot our lectures were automatically recorded on Zoom during COVID. We're hated by the clinicians, but at least the classes behind us are having a slightly better time. OP for this story added a quick edit on at the bottom as well. It says, edit, about the fainting thing. Yes, from skipping a single meal, most healthy adults shouldn't faint. Add on top of that the mental stress of operating for the first few times, the heat from the surgical lights, being covered head to toe in a non-breathable sterile barrier which traps in your body heat, a mask putting that heat back on your face, having to stand relatively still in one place for hours, no access to water for hours, you can't move your arms out of the sterile field, so limited and no stretching, plus the sight of blood being a common trigger for vasovagal syncope, and you have plenty of lightheaded or fainting students. Skipping food is added insult to injury when you last ate at 6 a.m. It's now 4 p.m., you haven't had water since noon, and you're overheating and stressed. Not to mention, vet school is a concentration of type A, high-achieving perfectionists with chronic stress from constant high-stakes exams. Fail, you're out of the program. Some of which are right before you go off into operating or maybe occurring the next day. Rampant anxiety and depression, sleep deprivation from our schedule and or insomnia. I know several classmates with disordered eating or full-blown EDs. It's not merely an isolated incident of skipping lunch one time. I truly don't understand this expectation for people to be places earlier when they're not scheduled to be there. And this goes for any kind of workplace, not just in veterinary like what we're reading here. You're living by the clock. You should enforce your activities to the clock. You be professional and show up still a few minutes before you start, but you definitely don't need to be there an hour early. These people were being unprofessional, demanding, and entitled, which unfortunately I think happens a lot in that specific profession. Our next story today comes to us from Department Large 9472. By all means, eat your words. Let's jump right in. I used to work as a food receiver in a retirement home kitchen. I won't say the name, but I will say it sounds vaguely Nordic. When I took over as food receiver in the primary kitchen, didn't have much training. I was just told, you helped the previous guy, you know the most, the job is yours now. Over the next almost 8 years, got that place maximized for peak use of space. Every now and then, we would get a new head chef, and they always made the mistake of trying to run it like a restaurant. Usually, in about 2 weeks, they'd realize that it was a different vibe and tone, and adjust accordingly. Had a great head chef as a boss for about 5 years. He knew that since deliveries were food and to some degree perishable, my schedule needed to be a little fluid and flexible to account for late deliveries while not having me rack up overtime. We worked out a great system where I basically set my own hours and got everything done. Fast forward to a regime change. Head chef was a tool, but with him came a woman whose job title was never told to any of us in the kitchen. We were just told she outranked all of us. First thing she did was decide I would no longer have a fluid schedule. My shifts would be posted on the board like all the others 2 weeks in advance. I didn't like it, but okay, fair enough. Cut to about 2 weeks later, I had to leave early for a dentist appointment that had been submitted and approved months ago. I reminded her the day before and the day of. Day after, she gives me a dressing down and a written reprimand for leaving before end of scheduled shift. She told me she didn't care what happened before, she never had papers for this request. Luckily for me, the head of the entire dining department, even above head chef, told her that she had been given all those time off approved papers when she started, and if my shift didn't reflect my pre-approved leaving early, it was her fault for not paying attention. Unluckily, she decided to take it out on me, saying that from now on, once schedule is posted, no changes unless it's in writing and signed by both of us minimum of 2 days prior, no exceptions. I looked at the calendar and saw I'd get to have fun and get a paycheck. See, being a food receiver, a monthly job of mine was to do end-of-month inventory on all food, beverage, and cleaning items. I had actually created the inventory paperwork myself. So instead of being alphabetical, the items were all listed together based on which area they were stored in. Dishwasher, chemical closet, freezer, dry food storage, soda syrup room, etc. Meaning after a few months, I could go room to room quickly and be done in less than 2 hours. Catch was, it had to be done either last thing last day of a month or first thing first day of a month, and could not do 2 in the same month. With no weekend deliveries, I worked Monday to Friday. Now, under the old cool head chef, if I had to do it on a Saturday or a Sunday, I'd just come in and do it, then leave early on a slow day, canceling extra hours. And lo and behold, this was one of those months, where inventory would have to be done on a Saturday or Sunday. Days she had me down as off on the calendar. I grinned like Tim Curry in Home Alone 2 and waited. Sure enough, last Friday of the month, she asks me, "Which day are you coming in to do inventory?" I told her I wasn't. I was scheduled off. She goes into a tirade about, "It's your job. You don't tell me no. I'll have you written up," etc. I calmly told her making the schedule was her job and responsibility, not mine. This earned me, "I don't care what the schedule says, you're coming in this weekend," to which I sweetly and sarcastically asked if she had a paper signed by both of us and dated no later than yesterday about us agreeing to this switch. "You know," I said, "the policy you created when you got called out by head office for not properly handling my scheduled early shift." If smartphones had been commonly around in 2009, I would have taken a picture of her face. I found out from Weekend Crew it took her almost an entire day to do it herself. That was first of many times she found out the fun way. About half the tasks I did under the old regime were technically not required by my work position. I just did them when I had extra time to help a boss I respected. Update number 1, or DLC for the gamers. Some of you have asked to hear more about the head chef mentioned in passing. I'll add the first and short instance now, the second and longer later. My failing is I get mad when I start thinking, and without realizing it, I end up filling the story with lots of insults and swears, and I need to rewrite to be somewhat professional. Chef Weenie number 1. So for the head chef and his nimrodic attitude, as I stated before, my shift was Monday to Friday. Never found out if this was a company policy or just for the kitchen staff, but technically, we in kitchen were supposed to work either one day every weekend or every other full weekend. The previous cool chef realized that only food delivered on weekend was 3 boxes of pastries, and Monday to Friday, there was a constant stream of food orders I needed to either place or receive and quality check. So he circumvented and had me, the food receiver, work the days when there was actually food to receive. Now, Chef Weenie comes around. He thinks I've politicked to get all weekends off, and tells me, "You're coming in Sunday." I tried to explain to him there's a logistical reason I have off weekends. He just interrupts me, claiming that my days of special treatment are over, and that, even though there's no deliveries, just find something to do, clean the freezer, fridge, or something. So I come in on Sunday. Now, I kept areas pretty clean on a daily basis, only falling behind by a day from time to time if I had heavy deliveries or something. 2 walk-in freezers, 1 walk-in fridge, 1 dry food storage room, and 1 soda syrup room. Except this Sunday, they were all recently cleaned with no issues, so I spent 8 hours puttering around. Now, a side tangent about the delivery schedule, Chef placed orders for the raw meat and seafood and fresh produce daily deliveries. I placed orders for twice a week ice cream deliveries, twice a week milk deliveries, and the big orders of bulk foods. I forget ice cream and milk schedule, but bulk orders were placed on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday deliveries. Everything got ordered on Friday for the first delivery day of the following week. So back to the week. I've worked Sunday into Wednesday now, and it's before they added me to the printed schedule, so I go to the chef and ask what my 2 days off that week are going to be. That's company policy, by the way, not entitlement. He says, "Well, take Saturday off, there's no deliveries." I then ask about my second day off. He looks at the calendar and gets an, "Oh, fornicate me" look. Starts stammering about all the orders that need placed or received both of those days. I agree that yes, there are a lot of deliveries and orders to be taken care of, but repeat that I need a second day off per company policy. He then starts in about how no one else here really knows how to place or take care of orders. I hold firm that it's not my problem. I'm supposed to have 2 days off. The heads of dining for the entire campus get involved. Right away, the chef is asked, "Why did you have him work a day when there's no deliveries?" So A, I got the next day, Thursday, off. B, chef had to scramble to get Friday orders placed for weekend, not even knowing where the order forms were. C, he didn't schedule me for any more weekends. And yes, that's the shorter incident. Now, OP mentioned that they were going to post a longer incident, but at the time of this recording, it looks like they haven't updated with that longer post. So I'll keep an eye on this one and update it at a later date. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Illustrious Tank 356. It says, "A lot of clown managers need to learn that oftentimes the best method of management is just leave people the F alone. As a middle manager myself, that's what I strive for. People who do the work know exactly what they're doing, and I don't get involved. Awesome. I get paid for doing very little, and my job would only be handling exceptions when they raise, or just lending a helping hand wherever I could. If there's one thing I learned about being a manager, it was to surround yourself by people who are smarter than you and can figure out things themselves. Micromanaging will absolutely get you nowhere. And if you're coming into an established business as a new manager, look around and see what's working well, because most of the people there are gonna know their jobs already, and you can just sit back and let them do their thing. I mean, if you've got a good team, being a middle manager can actually be a very cushy job where you do next to nothing. You're basically the buffer between the workers below you and the management above you, making sure that the management above you doesn't have their crap roll downhill to the workers below you. You're the buffer. Figure that out. Alright, our first story today comes to us from Extreme Conditions. Put that on my personal credit card? Okay, let's jump right in. In 2000, I was hired by a company in the construction industry. In 2002, they asked me to help start a new division of the company. They are the owners and the general manager. The general manager made it known he had a bug up his butt for me after my first year. Intermittent little digs, flippant attitude, demeaning, etc. Cut to after we get the new division up and running, and I request being able to start a web presence. Ownership is all over the endeavor, while the general manager brushes me off and says, "It's your division, do what you want." My division functioned with a separate business name. As I'm purchasing the domain name, my thoughts turn to the mothership and how it has zero web presence. Checked out and lined up the actual 2 business names and several close permutations so they would be somewhat secure in knowing their business names couldn't be taken out from under them. I go to the general manager and ask for a check from the main company to pay for the domain names, and he, again, brushes me off saying, "It's your division," his favorite line, "do what you want. You've got a credit card, expense it like anything else." I did start to ask, "Are you sure you want me to put it on my personal?" And it was curtly cut off. By 2004, my division was running at a 44% profit margin, which netted $750,000 US per year. In the first 6 months of its existence, I'd already paid back the build-out, training, machines, equipment, all the startup and setup. That is how successful the division was. The general manager became jealous of my achievements and tried to seize control over operations, citing he was the general manager of the entire company, whereas prior, it was my division to do what I wanted. Each horn in by him, I'd deflect and defend my division. By 2005, I'd had enough and ended up quitting as I heard he was preparing to fire me to fully seize the shiny penny as his own and take all the credit. I planned ahead, saved money, quit, and took 6 months off. It was a spring to fall extravaganza of doing whatever the heck I chose. Good times. Good frickin' times. About a year later, I can't remember exactly how long, a charge appeared on my credit card for my former company's domain names. Being for several, the amount stood out like a sore thumb. I called and verified the charge and who or what it was for, and in my conversation with a very nice person, they said, "Yes, Mr. X, all of these names are registered to you." About 3 years after I left the old company, my phone rings, and guess what number pops up on the screen? Oh yeah, I let that go to voicemail. The message was from the bookkeeper, asking if I could return their call. Next day, here they try again, but straight to voicemail they go. After a week of messages that were now pleading me to call them back, I returned the bookkeeper's call. Well, the cat came out of the bag, and the main company finally decided to build out a web presence and had shelled out a ton of money to do so. Think online catalog, interactive web page, all the things we expect now, but were high tech then, and were just coming into functional reality. Lo and behold, when they went to get their beautiful .com up and functioning, their exact name was taken, as well as a string of similar ones they could have used had I not snatched them up. The bookkeeper asked me to release the names to them. I indicated that would be very easy to do. It's a simple matter of signing them off, no? They agreed, as their anxious web builder had prepped them for the chat with me. I said I'd be happy to turn the keys to the kingdom over to them, but I wanted a few things. Reimbursed for all expenses up until that point for owning the domain names. A finder's fee, that pissed them off, but what can I say? I was yelled at to put their domain names on my personal credit card, and the general manager himself would have to hand deliver the check. That third line item was a sticking point, but dear Mr. Manager was forced to bend the knee. I mean, I certainly wasn't going to budge. General Manager shows up at the appointed place, hands me the check, and barks at me about returning their domain names to them today. He did this so loudly, people in the coffee shop we met at turned and stared. I laughed and said, "After the check clears, sure, yeah." He balked and insisted I immediately transfer the names to them as I was holding up the entire show. As I left, I smiled and said, "You're to blame here. You yelled at me to put the domain names on my credit card." He was absolutely fuming at this point. Besides, I love taking your advice to do what I want, remember? And I am. Okay, I'm not completely sure of the legalities on this one, but if OP was the rightful owner of those domain names, well, they should have charged that company a lot more to get them back. In fact, you'd think they could have sweetened the deal a little bit here and maybe redirected those domains to some kinda, raunchy website. That would have made the company be willing to pay a lot more out for it. Although it might have opened them up to a massive suing, I don't know how that works. I'm sure you guys will let me know in the comments. Our next story today, which also has an update post, comes to us from D.O. Bean. Boss told me to deep clean the back and to not come to front for any reason, so I did. Let's jump right in. I'm a 20-year-old male that works at a very popular restaurant in a very snobby area. My main job is to assist the servers in any way I can, so they only have to worry about sweet-talking the customers. I do all the heavy lifting for them, whether it's cleaning their tables or taking their drinks and food to their tables, I'm doing it. And all they have to focus on is making the customers laugh. They get tips that range from $17 to $40 per table, while I make $8 an hour and get treated poorly. Enough backstory, cue the malicious compliance. My manager came up to me in a "I'm better than you" mood and told me to deep clean the floors, ice makers, walls, trash can, and racks, and to not come to the front for any reason. I'm very annoyed at this because none of those things are my job duties. We have a staff that deals with all the cleaning of the back, so it didn't make any sense to have me do it. These tasks would have taken me an hour and a half max, but I was feeling a bit cheeky and decided to really deep clean the back until it was spotless. About 30 minutes later, the same manager comes up to me and tells me that there are 4 tables that need cleaning and 2 other tables just got sat and I need to bring their drinks to them. I looked at this man with the stare of a 20-year-old that has no bills to pay, and I say, "No, I'm not done cleaning." He looked shocked and responded angrily, "You can finish later, they need help." And I countered with, "No, it's filthy here. We don't want a health inspector to just walk into this filth, do we?" He storms off like a toddler that didn't get their candy. 2 hours go by and I'm on my hands and knees scrubbing, as if I was working for Chef Gordon Ramsay himself. The same manager comes back again with a smirk and says, "Wow, this looks like it's going to take you all day long. Maybe you should come to the front and help the servers, since there's a huge Sunday rush." I replied with, "You know, you might just be right," and I go back to cleaning. He storms off again. Fast forward to 2 minutes before my shift ends. My knees, legs, and fingers are all aching from cleaning. I shuffle my way to the front where my manager has been waiting for me, and he says, "You finally decided to come help, huh?" And I look at him without saying anything and clocked out. And then I tell him, "Sorry, I'm not clocked in." I walked out to my car while he was blowing my phone up. I didn't care. I had 5 days off back to back, and he can't fire me since I did as he told me to. The moral of the story is, don't think you are better than someone that has nothing to lose. OP added a couple of edits at the bottom here. The first one says, "Edit. For all the people that have been commenting that he can fire you, yeah, you are right, he could, but he won't do that because I'm the only one that is working the position, and no one has applied to come work at the place for $8 an hour. There are more details to the story than what I told, so instead of trying to be smart, just ask, why do you say that, instead of assuming I'm just some entitled kid who thinks they run the world. Thank you for reading." OP's second edit says, "Second edit. Good morning, everyone. Sorry I can't read most of y'all's posts, but I'd like to say thank you and answer a couple questions on here. I don't have any living, food, or insurance bills. The only things I have to pay for are my flight school and saving up for a car, which I don't consider bills, since I'm not being hunted down for those. I am also having a job interview tomorrow at a place that pays $17 an hour, and I'll be working 1/3 of what I am at my current restaurant job. Lastly, I do get tip shares from the servers, but it goes straight to my paycheck. So that means that the servers can report less of what they made and give me less. So instead of making $8 an hour, I'm making $9 an hour. I did the math through my paycheck. Thank you for reading. P.S. Update will be on Friday." Jumping right into the update that was posted 4 days ago, it says, "Starting off, sorry for not updating on Friday the 10th like I said I would. Life got in the way. Plus, several events happened. This will be a decent-sized update. Friday rolled around after I was coming back from the small vacation I had. The location had no service. I greeted some of the servers I'm cool with, and they all gave me an oh crap look, since apparently my boss had been trying to call me to come, open, and close on Wednesday and Thursday. Obviously, I didn't know this since I had no service where I had been at the time. I make my way to the boss expecting to get a freak out from him, which surprisingly he didn't have. He welcomed me back and asked a couple common questions about my trip. After 5 minutes of talking, he springs on me, "Since you didn't come in on Wednesday and Thursday, you need to come in Monday and Tuesday of next week." To which I replied, "Did you schedule me for those days?" And he immediately replies with, "No, but I know you have nothing to do since you're just a teen." At this point, my face just looked like I had seen a bear riding a bicycle while juggling bowling pins. I was absolutely amazed at how those words came out of his mouth with such ease, like he really believed he had any sort of power over me. I paused for a moment and said, "No, I don't think I will be doing that since I'm not currently scheduled on those days. I will not show up on those days." He then tried to argue that he had to come in on his day off to cover my shifts. I learned from the servers that he never showed up. The last thing I said to him before I started working was, "This isn't my problem, hire more people," and walked off. Saturday, the 11th. Today was looking like it was going to be pretty mundane, busy floor, a lot of food needing to be run, tables that need to be put back together. Pretty usual tasks of the job until my boss showed up and started barking orders, even though the restaurant was very packed and we needed all hands on deck. But obviously, that's not what he wanted. He couldn't care less if the restaurant went to the toilet. All he cared about was being in control. The boss tells me and a server to go clean the storage closet, and if we don't, we can just be cut. We both reluctantly go and do it since he had 4 tables to attend to, and I wanted to help him so he wouldn't get bad tips just because a man-child wants to give tasks that can be done later and lay it out on the table for us to see. Super Bowl Sunday, the 12th, was supposed to be a really slow day since we don't have any TVs on the walls and we don't serve bar food. But as soon as church got out, we were super slammed to the point you couldn't see the front door. It stayed like that until 3 p.m. and I was just ready to leave. So I did. I clocked out on time as you would at any other job. And my boss saw that and said, "You're not being a team player right now. You're just going to abandon ship just like that?" To which I reply, "Well, yeah, you only have me scheduled for the time scheduled, not for when it's convenient for you. I have no problem working over the time I'm scheduled for, but I just can't with this snarky remarks and annoying temper tantrums he has on the daily. I'm just very done with him. So why would I go above and beyond for him? Plus, it was the Super Bowl, and of course, I had plans. I wanted to hang out with my friends and not work. Thursday the 16th, I received an email from the new place I'm going to be working at, and I got the job. The new job will be paying me $16 an hour, double of what I've been making. I also start Monday. I had gone to work the same day and told my boss, I will not be able to put my 2 weeks in. However, I will work through this Sunday, and that will be my last day working for you. I hope that is enough time for you so you can find my replacement. And if this doesn't work for you, I can always make my last day be today, since Texas doesn't require employees and employers to submit a 2-week resignation. He starts to freak out since Monday to Thursday of next week, the restaurant has a bunch of large reservations. He replies with, "If you stay with us, I can give you a big raise for all your hard work." My eyebrows raise since there is no way that his raise will match my new employer's rate. Intrigued, I ask, "How much were you thinking of giving me?" Drumroll, clears throat, "I can give you a 25-cent raise, which will make your paychecks a little bit heavier." I am dumbfounded. My brain packed up and jumped off my head. This was the best deal I could have gotten ever. Screw the new job. Who can say no to an extra $20 to their paycheck? Kidding. I politely declined and told him I had already made up my mind. And for the rest of my shift, he was in the office scrambling around posting job listings and looking at applications. It's really crazy how someone goes from being a complete dictator to a servant when they lose their power. These last 2 days, he's been nothing but cupcakes and sunshine because he knows I can leave whenever I like. Thank y'all for reading. I will try to post an update this Sunday on my last day working here if there is a big enough event. OP really needs to look into if this new employer has a referral for bringing other employees on, because they could go back to that old workplace of theirs, tell all the other people there that aren't making good money about this new job, and try to get them to come over and make some money in the process. I mean, I'm willing to bet OP wasn't the only one being treated like crap by that manager. I've had a manager like that myself in the past. Screw you, Rick. And you just want to shove it to them. Now, if I could have taken other employees with me when I left my job, I would have done it in a heartbeat. So I recommend that OP does the same thing. This is another one of those stories that proves the point that most people don't quit crappy jobs, they quit crappy managers. Most jobs aren't bad, people are bad. A 25-cent raise. Should have told the boss what he could do with that quarter. Our next story today comes to us from CurrentFly8346. Oh, that was Katie's job. Let's jump right in. I was working for a manufacturer years ago. It was a small operation run by a husband, CEO, and wife with a sister business of a front-end platform that was run by the wife's brother. The husband's mom and some cousins also worked there between the two businesses. With an operation like this, you had the typical micromanagement from CEO, minimum wage pay for top dollar performance expectations, and the general nonsense you can expect in a setup like this. I had this job while in college and needed to build my resume. They let me have a flexible schedule so I could leave early for my night classes and when I had midterms and finals, so I knew I had to stick it out. After about 6 months of working there, my job responsibilities grew tremendously, but my salary did not. There was a high turnover rate in the office from the "we're a family" environment that meant actual family got special treatment and everyone else was expected to do a crazy amount of work without getting any credit. One of my friends, we'll call her Katie, was looking for work and my company was hiring. I told her what she was getting into, but as a recent college grad looking for office experience, she decided to give it a shot. First, my referral bonus never came, even after she worked there for 90 days, and I was told that I shouldn't inquire about it because I referred someone to help the company, not to get the extra money. I wasn't in a position to push, so I didn't. I trained Katie in her role as she was taking some of my old responsibilities. Well, the CEO and the wife didn't like how much time the two of us spent talking to each other, or how much time we spent away from our desks, which was genuinely us using the restroom and getting water. This made no sense because I handled product onboarding, and Katie suggested products for curated events, so it was important that she knew what new products were coming out and when she could start promoting them, so that stock wouldn't sit in the warehouse. We separately had meetings with the CEO and office manager, putting us on probation for this behavior. Cue malicious compliance. We stopped talking as much in the office, effectively cutting me off from curated events and making it impossible for Katie to use our new products on the upcoming events. Events could be scheduled anywhere from a week to several months in advance, so it was a great way to boost sales and visibility of our new items. My friend ended up getting fired for having a brain and questioning some of the stupid policies. Also, for doing something so outrageous as taking her unpaid lunch hour, showing up at 9 and leaving at 5. Normally, I would have gone back into the platforms to curate events until they found someone to take over the role, but I was petty. I had been there for a little over a year. I was training employees, teaching myself the ins and outs of all our retailers' back ends to upload products, coordinating with our factories overseas, the freight companies, and our warehouse so that products would be live as soon as we had stock, and was still getting paid like I did for the minimal role I had when I got hired. So, not my job, not my problem. Fast forward a few months, the CEO decides to show up to work on the office floor instead of working out of his private office. Whenever he was on the floor, he was always super loud and disruptive to the general flow. I hear him talk about sales from the past few months, specifically about sales from events, so naturally my ears perk up. He starts getting louder. I don't get it. There's this huge decline in sales. None of our new products are getting any traction. I haven't been addressed, so I keep tapping away at my computer and act oblivious. He calls over the office manager and they start hashing it out. 6 months ago, the sales for our new items went down significantly. I'm thinking, yeah, duh. That's when you told me and Katie to stop talking. The initial data that was supplied with product photos and descriptions weren't clear. It would have been a very long process for Katie to sift through the new products to try and match them to events, as opposed to what we used to do, which was she would tell me the theme and what she was looking for, and I'd get her data on a short list of items that she could review to match to said events, as opposed to dumping 100 products on her. Then, 3 months ago, they became almost non-existent. Sales have dropped almost 70% with these events. 3 months ago is when Katie got fired. Eventually, the two of them piece together that they need to blame whoever is curating events, and the CEO starts asking everyone in the office whose responsibility is to work on events. Finally, it gets to a point where I can't stay quiet. The office is too small, and I play too big a role in product management. So I chime in, "Oh, wasn't that Katie's responsibility?" CEO replies, "She hasn't worked here in 3 months. You mean to tell me no one has been submitting products for 3 months? He is livid, and it's clear that I am now in the path of his rage. Why has no one been handling this? Everyone is kind of looking around, and the office manager, let's call her Karen, starts shifting the blame onto me, since technically Katie was in my department. Once the finger pointing started, I was prepared to defend myself. Well, Karen, I thought you were the one who was in charge of managing and keeping track of every employee's role. So Karen replies, "I am, but you knew this is an important part of our sales and marketing." I reply with, "The week before she was let go, didn't you specifically get all of her passwords and a complete list of all of her tasks?" Karen replies, "Yes." She is clearly concerned with where I'm going with this. "And after she was let go, did you communicate to me that those tasks were now my responsibility?" "Well, no, but I shouldn't have had to." "But you're in charge of delegating tasks and making sure all work is assigned to employees. Are you implying that I was supposed to know that you had a list of tasks unassigned? Why would I assume that you didn't delegate those to another team member when that's an essential part of your role?" Needless to say, Karen was very annoyed with me, but I wasn't taking the fall. They didn't ask me to curate events. Karen handled that, which got them to hire another person very quickly, because it was too much work for her on top of her other duties. The story of me and the new girl needs its own post, so I'll end this one here. OP, you can't leave us on a cliffhanger, come on, we need this new story now, we deserve it. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but in this story and the previous one, they both seemed like they really didn't have anything to lose, so they were willing to push back against the management. Now, if you're a family person, you're responsible for taking care of a whole family of people, and you only have this job without something else lined up, I don't think you're going to be anywhere near as willing to call out your management team like the OPs did in this story and the previous one. But I'd love to know what you guys think. Please comment down below. Alright, our last story today comes to us from Gloomy Ideal 3670. Dress for the job you want, not the job you have. Let's jump right in. I work for a family business with 30 plus employees. This is a company that has friends and family members as top-tiered management, and often made up rules whenever they felt like it. When new employees join the company, they sign a basic employment contract, stating the compensation, benefits, and work hours. The company does not have a written code of conduct. One particular manager is a friend of the president. Let's call her Sally. Sally manages a team of 8 employees, including myself. We aren't allowed to make small talk while working, and we are required to let her know when we start taking our breaks, and when we return from breaks. Sally interjects whenever a team member is asking another team member questions, because Sally is a micromanager. Sally also makes us come to work early once a week for 30 minutes, unpaid, so that she can recap the previous week, and often uses this time to tell us what we're doing wrong. She made it clear that this weekly meeting is mandatory. During one meeting, she brought up expectations for continued employment at the workplace. No swearing, no talking bad about customers amongst ourselves, no personal phones on desks, no music during work hours, no talking to other departments unless it's work-related, etc. Then she brought up dress code. It's important to note that we've never heard of a dress code at work, and our jobs do not require face-to-face interactions with customers. Most of our dealings are via phones or emails. We may see a customer drop by once or twice a year. Most of the team members wear hoodies and long sleeve t-shirts with jeans or leggings. I usually wear a simple top with pants with my hair neatly blow dried. Apparently, that's not appropriate enough. Sally said we should try to dress better and more professionally to keep up with the company's image. Her sell was, dress not for the job you have, but the job you want. She made us all sign a document citing the topic of discussion at the meeting. You want us to dress for the job we want? Okay. A few of my colleagues and I decided to maliciously comply the following day. I put my hair in a messy bun, wore my Costco leggings and my husband's old t-shirt. That was my everyday look when I was unemployed. Sally saw me when I walked through the door and asked why I was underdressed. I said, you asked us to dress for the job I want. I want to go back to being a stay-at-home mom. I loved staying at home. She said, that's not what I meant. I meant bigger aspirations and goals, as she looked at me with exasperation. Shortly after, my other colleagues showed up one after the other, two wearing full workout gear and one wore her anime costume. One guy wore a t-shirt with expletives. The president noticed and asked us if Halloween came early, and we told him what Sally said. I don't know what happened, but safe to say, there was no mention of any dress code since. So OP, these 30-minute meetings where you're not getting paid, well, those are illegal. And the only reason they keep getting away with that and saving the company money on that time is because nobody is making a stink about it. Now, I have a feeling if you were able to get all of those coworkers to go with you on dressing for the job they wanted, you'd probably be able to get a bunch of them to report that meeting, as illegal as it is, and maybe get the company to do something about it. Or even get them to refuse to go. Because if enough people do that, it'll send a very clear message to the management. I mean, if one person complains, it's a bit annoying, but if a whole bunch of people complain, well, that's a problem that they need to fix. There's safety in numbers, OP, and you need to use that to your advantage. Alright, our first story today comes to us from Epic Sausage 69. Only do what is in my job title? Fine. Good luck paying employees. Let's jump right in. So, I work for a construction company as an inventory admin. My job is to basically schedule counts of our warehouse and input the numbers they give me for inventory. Then, try to see what the problem is when the numbers on the last count and the current count don't add up. There is a little bit more to it, but I will not bore you with the specifics. The problem with this job is that when you have been doing it long enough and are good at it, there is less work to do. In the beginning, when counting one rack out of 60 racks of material would take a few days, it was fine because I was always busy. But now that everything is in order, the entire warehouse can be counted in 3 days. This leaves me bored for most of the time. So to fix this, I studied up on our cloud-based ERP service that we use for all internal and external transactions, and have become sort of an expert on it. Every single aspect of this company uses this ERP service to do their job. Timesheets, HR, payroll, accounting, scheduling, management, manufacturing, ordering from vendors, delivering, inventory, etc. all runs through this ERP service. So it's very important that this service is up and running perfectly 24/7. I became so proficient in this service that our VP decided to cut ties with our consultants of the ERP because I could do what they did, but better, quicker, and much cheaper. For reference, we were paying these consultants $5,000 a month just to be on standby if we needed them for some sort of problem that could arise from using this ERP, and had to dish out more money to fix those problems depending on how many hours of their time was spent to fix said problems. Not sure on their exact rate, but it was something like $200 an hour, and they took weeks to fix anything. Well, I could fix the problem in time for my daily afternoon crap break. I never got an official job title or raise of any kind for being an expert on this service. The company just saw me being able to do it and let me fix things that happened, so they no longer needed the outside help. I wasn't too upset because it gave me something to do, so I was glad to help the company save money, even if none of that money fell my way. Skip ahead a few months. We now have a new warehouse manager, and someone in the warehouse F'd something up in inventory by sending a bunch of materials to the wrong job with no records of it being shipped. We are talking $500,000 F-up here. In the same day, our ERP had an update that caused a bunch of bugs with our accounting department. So I decided to work on the ERP problem first because the warehouse's F-up is more of a delay F-up and not actually stopping anybody from doing their job at the moment, while this accounting problem means our bills are not able to be paid. You can guess what kind of issues we will have if bills are not paid. The ERP bug turns out to be quite big and numerous, so it ends up taking me a couple days to figure it out, but I fix it before any bills are actually due, and decide to take lunch a little early to celebrate a victory. Crisis averted. New warehouse manager storms into my office after I get back from lunch and is livid. Apparently, the bosses were pinning the blame on him for the warehouse F-up, and considering he is the one who oversees shipments and personnel in the warehouse, the blame is rightfully placed. He starts laying into me, asking why I have not fixed the problem yet, yelling and screaming like a child. I tried explaining that I was fixing an ERP issue and have not had time to look at the warehouse problem yet. He gets even more angry and notes that it is funny how I have time to take early lunches, but not do my job. That started to piss me off, but I held my tongue and kept calm about the situation. He then ordered me to only do what is in my job title and to leave the ERP BS to the people competent enough to handle it, as he put it. Since this guy was technically my supervisor, I had no choice but to obey. I asked him to send me that in writing, and he snarks and storms back into his office. 5 minutes later, I get an email stating that under no circumstances am I to work on anything related to ERP unless it involves inventory. Cue malicious compliance. I do nothing but inventory from that point forward, knowing darn well that we would be essentially coasting until we hit a problem that I would refuse to fix. Sure enough, not even a week later, I get an email from HR that some sort of bug in the ERP system was preventing them from accessing payroll to pay employees this week. I reply an apology that I'm no longer able to work on ERP bugs due to supervisor, and refer to the ERP system help guide for further assistance. I know the help guide was not going to help her in the slightest, but it was no longer my problem, so I was not going to deal with it. Skip a few days later to Friday, I checked my bank account in the morning before getting to work and laughed because there was no money deposited. That problem never got fixed. I hurry up and get to work, excited to see the chaos unfold. And what I was expecting was an understatement. When I show up to work, I see the entire warehouse staff of 50 people walking out of the front door. I stopped one and asked why they're leaving, and they reply with, "I didn't get paid today, so I'm not coming back until I do." I go into the office and see the warehouse manager in a panic. He has jobs that need material and nobody to load it onto trucks or deliver. I ask him if he needs help with anything, and he just screams at me to leave his office because he's getting phone calls out the butt from superintendents of jobs asking why our material has not arrived yet. I pass by HR on the way to my office and see a bunch of the bosses huddled up over her computer with angry and confused expressions on their faces, I guess trying to figure out the problem. I felt bad for her because it really was something out of her control, but I knew she would ultimately be okay because she had been there for so long that they would never fire her. When I get to my office, I see the VP waiting for me there. He has a very pissed off expression on his face. When we get inside, he demands to know why I did not fix the problem in HR when she emailed me about it. I replied that I am no longer allowed to work on ERP problems as it is not in my job title. He has the most shocked look on his face and asked why all of a sudden I had a change of heart. I show him the email from the warehouse manager, and I could see the dots connect in his head. He immediately storms out, and I see him heading straight to the warehouse manager's office. They were in there for a few hours, but eventually he comes back to my office. He seems calmer now and asks me politely if I can fix the problem in HR and if I can resume fixing the ERP if needed. At this point, I liked the relief of responsibility and told him I would only do it if he put it officially in my job title along with a raise. his calmness turned to anger again, and he says, "I cannot believe you," as he storms out and returns to his office. A few hours later, he sends out a mass email that he has hired the old ERP consultants to fix the problem, and that next week, everyone would be paid for the money they are owed, along with the money they earned if they return to work. This one surprised me, as he would rather pay over $60,000 a year to consultants than give me a few extra bucks an hour for better work. I think he expected me to change my mind and just do it for my own paycheck, but I decided to wait because I knew how these consultants were, and if they managed to fix this problem in a week, I would streak naked through the office. Most of the warehouse staff agreed to return, but were still upset about not getting paid. Sure enough, next Friday comes around, nobody gets paid again. At this point, it is becoming a real problem, and the entire staff is becoming agitated. They have bills to pay. I even heard a bunch of the warehouse talking about some competitors nearby they could go to for work. At this point, I even considered just fixing the problem because the warehouse didn't deserve to be treated like that due to poor management. Maybe I am the butthole here for this, but I am severely underpaid and can barely afford my apartment. There is no reason I should do extra work for free. That same day, the VP returns to my office and hands me papers. These papers said that I would be promoted to a newly created position that dealt with inventory and ERP upkeep. It would be its own department and he would be my direct supervisor. Also came with a hefty raise. All I had to do was sign and agree. I looked up at him after reading the paper and he had the saddest look on his face. "Please just sign it. The consultant said it would take them weeks to get around to fixing it due to the high volume of clients they have taken on, and we cannot keep skipping paychecks." I happily signed it and immediately got to work on the HR issue. Managed to even fix it that same day. It was just a simple problem with the permissions of HR and payroll in the ERP due to the update. Now, down in the comment section for this one, OP was told that they should probably look into working for the ERP consultants because they probably pay a lot better, considering what they're charging. Now, OP said that they've definitely been looking into that, but they might become a consultant themselves independently when the company they're working for crashes and burns. I think the biggest lesson we can take away from this story, though, is that when one of your supervisors tells you to do something sketchy that you know is going to hurt the company in the long run, make sure you get that in writing. Cover your butt. That's the only way you're going to come out on top in the end. Our next story today comes to us from Albino Raven 666. Customer asked me to count out a bag of live crickets in front of her, loses out on bonus crickets. Let's jump right in. I, 32 female, work part-time at a pet store to supplement my income as my salary of a full-time teacher doesn't always pay the bills. Plus, I have a few pets, and 20% off in-store purchases is rather helpful. Anyway, one of the things we supply are live and frozen feeder animals for things like reptiles, certain aquatic creatures, and invertebrates. These include things like mice, rats, dubia roaches, bloodworms, mealworms, waxworms, superworms, and crickets. The mice and rats are either frozen or live, but either way, they're easy to count and box up for the customer. Dubia roaches, mealworms, waxworms, and superworms are pre-packaged and price-marked, but the crickets are not. Crickets are kept in these large containers with a mesh top, egg cartons for the crickets to climb and hide in, cricket food, and hydration. This means when customers ask for crickets, which we usually sell by the dozen, we have to count and retrieve them manually, while putting them in a plastic bag we then fill with air and tie off to go with the customer. Our method for transferring the crickets is to lightly tap the egg cartons over a funnel-like object that doesn't have a hole at the bottom. We tap the crickets in, wrap the plastic bag around the mouth of the funnel, then tip it and lightly tap the crickets into the bag. Some crickets jump in out of order or cling to others, so often customers are given bonus crickets, which we're okay with. It's better than shorting them. So customers are always given the right amount or often more than what they asked for without an increase in price. Most people get this. The customer in this story did not. A woman comes in and she asked for 4 dozen crickets, 48 crickets total. I went to the back, tapped the crickets from the cartons into the funnel, and then counted them into the bag. As per usual, the occasional extra cricket tumbled or hopped in, probably putting the total to be a bit over 50 by the time I was done. I bagged them, tied the bag, then took them to the counter. Now, I don't know if this woman was having a bad day or if she had been stiffed by another store in the past, but she demanded that we count out the crickets in front of her before she pay for them. I explained that it was likely she got more than what she asked for, and counting out 48 crickets individually would take a little while. She insisted she wanted to be sure we weren't ripping her off. So I got one of those small plastic critter keepers and a pair of tongs. I opened the bag, making it deflate and slightly more painful to work with, and inserted the tongs. Delicately, so not to crush the crickets, I grabbed each one with the tongs and started counting slowly so not to crush the crickets with the tongs or lose my place while counting, something I do struggle with, and dropped each individually counted cricket into the critter keeper. So after about 5 to 10 minutes at the counter, meticulously counting crickets with tongs, and maybe deliberately taking a little bit longer than I had to out of spite, a line was building up behind the woman, and I was getting close to the end of my count. Eventually, I hit the grand total of what she paid for, 48 crickets, and wouldn't you believe it, there were 10 left over in the bag, almost a whole extra free dozen she would have gotten had she not asked me to count. I said, "Oh, would you look at that? My mistake. You were right. I did miscount. I'll put these other ones back and ring you up for the 48. I'll be right back." And before she could protest, I wandered off to dump the last 10 crickets back into the cricket container. When I came back to check her out, she was silent, not looking at me, did her best to ignore the irritated looks of the customers lining up behind her while I poured her 48 crickets back into a plastic bag. She paid, then slunk off sheepishly out the door without a thank you or a glance back. I then got through the rest of the line quickly and apologized to the customers in line for the wait. I sent them home with some free samples, thanked them for their patience, then continued along with my shift. She never complained, and she did return to the location several times after. She never asked anyone to count crickets again. Now, OP added a couple of edits on at the bottom. It says, edit, wow. So this kind of blew up. Just a couple of things I want to respond to, common questions and statements, etc. 1. People keep saying they've read this before. You may have read similar stories. If you look at some of the older comments in this thread, you'll see links to different stories with similar themes. A cricket story from 2 years ago, there's a feeder fish one, and one about a guy who sold mini samosas. There's also a lot of people in the comments who have worked similar situations sharing their stories. So while the situation in which this happened may not be unique, this is an original story I wrote yesterday based on a real experience I had at the pet store I work at. 2. Yes, I get paid horribly as an educator and that sucks, but I do love my teaching career. I enjoy working with students and seeing them grow and develop into the adults they will become. It's an honor to nurture and feed that development. But yes, we are underpaid and underappreciated. Thank you to those sympathizing. What a world we live in when the people that educate our children and get them set up for the big bad world after school have to take on second jobs because we don't pay them enough to do that. That is a load of BS. Getting back to the crickets, OP said in another comment that they're about 95 cents per dozen after tax. Let's even say hypothetically that somebody gets shorted 1 or 2 out of however many they bought. They could probably pick up more change on their way back out to their car from the ground than it would cost to get those 2 extra crickets. I just don't understand some people. Our next story today comes to us from Shabuti. Working during my planned vacation, then have to pay me extra when I leave. Let's jump right in. I'd been working at this company for about 3 years. I had been consistently growing in my role and eventually was given a project to own, with 1 to 2 other team members if needed. But it was a major project with a quick turnaround. I determined I could do it myself, though it would be tight, and since I was hoping for a promotion, I took on the project solo. I was able to deliver the project slightly ahead of schedule and with better quality than expected, which allowed us to make a huge sale. The head of the company gave me an award at an all-hands meeting for the work I did, and my boss let me know I was on track for an end-of-year promotion. with a nice pay raise and more responsibilities. But I was needed in another part of the business, so I was going to have to transfer under a new manager that was notoriously hard to work with. I transferred to this manager, and the first meeting we had to get on the same page, I brought up that I had a 3-week planned vacation in 4 months. I had never taken vacation, so had 6 weeks saved up and did not want to start losing it. He told me, of course, that would be fine, and we would be able to make it work. About a week later, we have our first meeting with our product team. They had a new, large product idea and wanted it to be released in just 3 months. As my team looked over the details, we knew this was a 6 to 8 month project at best, and it would be better to deliver it in smaller increments so they still had something to show in 3 months, or we would need to push out the schedule. My boss was adamantly against both, so throughout the next week, he made us have last-minute 3 to 4 hour brainstorming sessions every day, but he would not even tell us until around 3 p.m., forcing all of us to work late every day that week. At the end of the week, there was no way we could figure out to deliver everything on the shorter timeline. And so my boss asked me to stay behind after the meeting. For another hour, he railed against me, saying I was failing at this project and that he could not see me getting a good annual review in 4 months, and that a promotion wasn't even on the table. This annual review would also include the project I had just received an award for, and is supposed to encompass 12 months of work, but he was basing this off of the first 2 weeks on this new team. At this point, I knew he was ready to use me as a scapegoat for his bad management, and started applying elsewhere. We continued working on the project, and sure enough, at the end of 3 months, we were still far from being able to deliver, and my boss was getting heat from up above. Right around this time, I received an offer from another company that would be the promotion I wanted and an even larger pay increase. I accepted the offer and negotiated my start date to be after my vacation, now 3 weeks away. That same day, my boss calls me into his office and tells me, "We need to talk about this vacation." I reminded him that we had talked about it months before and that everything is booked, flights, hotels, etc. He would not let up and told me there was no way I could take 3 weeks off with how behind schedule we are. He told me I could go on my trip, but I could not take vacation and would be expected to be online during our business hours throughout the trip, 4 a.m. to 1 p.m. local time in my vacation spot. Cue malicious compliance. Every morning while on vacation, I would log on at 4 a.m., check emails, answer questions on our internal chat, and do the minimum work expected, logging off as soon as it hit 1 p.m., all without burning any vacation. With 1 week left in vacation, I requested a conference call with my boss to give him my 2 weeks notice. He was shocked and tried everything to get me to stay and finish out the project, including bringing back up a possible promotion. I told him I had already accepted a job with a start date upcoming. I worked my last 2 weeks before moving on to my new job. Because my boss required me not to take vacation, the company had to pay out all of my accrued vacation once I left, a little less than 7 weeks at this point, including the 3 weeks I had originally planned to take. Now short-staffed, I hear from other coworkers that the project missed 2 more adjusted deadlines, and eventually the manager was demoted before being let go from the company. About 6 months later, the head of the first company asked me to lunch to offer me a role taking over my former boss's old position. I negotiated an even higher pay increase, as well as company equity, and ended up going back there for 3 more years. Okay, this story just kept giving and giving and giving. OP was an absolute genius in how they just shoved this back on the company. I mean, they got to sit on a beach having quote-unquote vacation while still getting fully paid for it, and then when they went back, they got a vacation time accrual payout? Oh, that was just beautiful. Alright, our first story today comes to us from Petty Rusty. You get angry and belittle me when I want to follow the instruction manual on your new piece of kit? Enjoy your brand new Rusty Wheel Slicer. Let's jump right in. It's been years, but I'm still worried that this person is going to hunt me down in my sleep. hence the throwaway. I used to work at a deli shop / cafe place just to make ends meet while I went to uni, and the owner of that place was a real piece of work. If you got on her bad side, you were on the crap list, and she would be both openly and passively aggressive with the general vibe that you were an incompetent idiot no matter what you did. I heard that woman scream at a 15-year-old on her second day because she had mixed up coffee in teacups, which differed in size by about an ounce, just to give you an idea of her personality. After this whole experience, my dad told me that, as a general hint, it may be good to be suspicious if a workplace hires exclusively teen girls with no experience, because they're very unlikely to recognize crappy workplace treatment. There were 2 people in this place who didn't take her crap. Me, a mid-20s recovering addict who's seen way worse, and a 45-year-old Iranian man who told her she could go F herself when she berated him for not being willing to come in early to his 11-hour shift to prep ingredients, off the clock of course. I liked that dude. With the stage set, on to the malicious compliance. When I started, this place desperately needed a new wheel meat slicer. The one they had made constant screeching noise and drove everyone crazy. About a month and a half into my employment, they got one. Industrial grade, cost $5,000. Both looked and worked accordingly. Amazing piece of kit. As we were all celebrating and unpacking it, I flipped through the instruction booklet to look up how it works, and specifically how to clean it, as there were quite a few parts. Manual says to clean everything detachable thoroughly, but that the wheel itself should be cleaned by letting it run on very low speed with safety precautions and using a cloth and alcohol-based cleaning agent on the exposed part. There were some pictures and detailed instructions on how to do this, and it explicitly stated not to take the whole wheel off and deep clean it, as this would remove the wheel lubricant and anti-corrosive agent and risk damage to the machine, and to especially not let water or any cleaning agents get into the machine without making sure to thoroughly replace any lubricant. I was working the evening shift, so 99% of the time it was up to me to clean it. The instructions is how I clean the machine, because I trust the designer to know how to clean it. Or I do for about 2 days until my boss sees me, asks what the F I'm doing, and why I'm not taking the wheel off to clean it. She berates me about food safety and hygiene standards, telling me how disgusting I am for doing it this way. I stand my ground and inform her I do it this way because of the instructions, that I'm following the manual, and explain the reason behind it. If we scrub it down, especially the inner part, the grease will go away a lot faster and will risk damage to the machine. She basically tells me to shove it and do it her way. Now, I'm not going to ruin a $5,000 thing because one woman doesn't understand how lubrication works, but the very next day, my manager sees me clean the machine and gives me an extremely condescending talk down on how this isn't how we approach hygiene, and how boss told me you don't seem to understand food safety. My explanation falls on deaf ears again, and I'm also informed not only am I expected to take the wheel off and scrub it at the end of the day, but after every use. Boss also wants me to make sure I spray off the inside section to ensure there's no bacteria in there, with some hints that there'd apparently been a whole colony of life growing in there due to my 2-day negligence. She wants me to spray soap and water mixture into the cogs of a machine they just bought. The blade is stainless steel, but the effing cogs aren't. Effing fine. If that's the way you want me to do it, that's what I will do. Every day, 5 times a day, I take that effing machine apart and scrub it down. Every day, I see that lubrication disappear more and more, and after a week, it's all gone, eventually becoming replaced by growing patches of rust. I feel bad for the machine, but I do as I've been told. I only work 6 days a week, so every day I come in after my break thinking that surely yesterday my manager would have reacted. Nope. She takes it apart just like I do, clean it like I do, and doesn't seem to think twice about the fact that this brand new machine is rusting apart in front of our eyes. In fact, she goes the extra mile and also scrubs the cog itself, which is probably why a year or so worth of lubricant disappeared in 1 week. The thing about rusty machinery is that it usually works up until a certain point, but once it reaches that point, there's no going back. One day, I turn it on, and it makes a screeching noise I can only imagine came from the soul of this bit of kit, wondering why God has forsaken it. And it's like the clocks all stop. My coworker in the pastry section comes over to ask what the F that noise is. My boss and manager come into the room with the same question. And I just shrug and slice my salami. Boss tells her coworker to go get some lubrication for the gears, and after a minute, he puts some effing spray-on oil lube in front of me and tells me to lube the gears up. I ask him where the lithium lubricant paste is, since according to the instructions, that is what you need, and he seems flabbergasted that putting something made for hinges and ball bearings isn't appropriate for a meat slicer. 2 days and some tinnitus later, he's acquired some grease and then proceeds to be stumped when I let him know I'm not going to stop doing my regular job to spend 30 minutes greasing up this machine, unless someone else takes over my station or they pay me overtime. My boss is meanwhile demanding to know why I haven't told them we needed to stock up on lithium grease, which I don't even bother to respond to. I make sandwiches, I'm not your mechanic. I left that job a few weeks later, and when I did, the machine was still crying the song of its ancestors every time we turned it on. And we were still scrubbing it down from the inside out daily, of course. I have since then gotten a sneaking suspicion I know what happened to its predecessor, and me and my dad, who is actually a mechanic, still laugh about it sometimes. My boss did ask rhetorically at one point how the heck the machine got to that stage so fast. I answered that it's probably because we've been scrubbing the lubrication and corrosion protection off several times a day, and I take great pleasure in the memory that she completely ignored me. It's the only time while I was there that she didn't snap back at me, and I like to think she remembered back to when I explicitly told her that if we clean this thing in that way, this is exactly what would happen. Overall, I don't think a $5,000 machine would make or break anything, but F me, did that feel good. Well, OP, from the way you've described this, it just sounds like your bosses wanted that thing to be squeaky clean. Oh, that was lame. All this talk about a meat slicer reminded me of the time that I worked at that fast food restaurant. You know, the one that has the cowboy hat on the logo, and they deal almost exclusively in roast beef. Yeah, that one. Anyway, I was in there, had the roast beef on the slicer, and it got knocked off onto the floor. My manager told me to wash the roast beef off in the sanitation sink and put it back on the slicer and continue working. Oh, that was my last day at that job. This was well over 20 years ago now, but that memory is still so clear. Our next story today comes to us from Cole Carmot. Approve the order? Okay, boss. Let's jump right in. I don't know whether to put this in Tales from Retail or here, but I ultimately decided here since I did what I was told, knowing there would be fallout. A couple years ago, before I joined Reddit, I worked front desk at a print and marketing shop, receiving orders from customers and processing them to be ready to print. A woman came in while we were rather busy, and we'll call her Fortunate for the eventual play on words. One of the ways I normally handle this is handing order forms to waiting customers to fill out their contact info while they wait. This woman was strange. She filled out the order form, but waited until all the customers were out of the store before she came to the counter. She handed a USB to me and the order form. To my surprise, the order form was already all filled out, from the quantity of pages, type of paper, binding options, laminated pages. To say she wanted everything but the kitchen sink would be an understatement, as this was easily a $100 order for what appeared to be a single copy of a 23-page book. The file was even PDF format already, so essentially print ready. However, Fortunate then gave me a cryptic request as I plugged the USB in. Could you please complete the order without looking at it? Now, while some would immediately call this a red flag, for me, it's just another Tuesday evening. It's not uncommon for people in relationships to get specialized calendars or photo prints done of, let's call them distasteful nudes. Not raunchy stuff, but straddling that border. Holiday calendars and Valentine's Day photo books have desensitized me to that stuff. Unfortunately, I have to open the file to make sure everything is formatted correctly. Even then, as the finishing work gets done, people will have to look at it. I do offer to her, however, that if she is concerned about many people seeing it, I could do it myself and ensure only I look at it to minimize eyes on it. Alternatively, she could also do it in the self-serve section and forego the finishing. Fortunate gets flustered at this point and without saying a word gets up and leaves. I called to tell her that she left her USB, but she just left and told me to destroy it. Okay, now I'm curious. I plugged in the USB and there was one file, doc_1.pdf. I opened the file and while I don't remember exactly what I was expecting, it wasn't this. Your husband is cheating on you with me, in custom font with a picture of a guy nude on a bed and who I assume is Fortunate beside him. Fortunate was Mistress Fortunate. Her face was expertly blurred out. This was clearly a graphic designer. The document was short and to the point. One sentence in big custom font on each page. It explained who Fortunate was and that she had no idea that the husband, who will be named Jerk, was married as they were dating. Pictures and everything. She explained that she wanted to keep her identity a secret to protect herself, but felt the wife needed to know the moment she learned of her. Okay, well, that's a story that isn't over yet. Later that day, I was processing orders from our online system. This basically involves opening files, skimming through them, making them print ready, then approving them for production. I did not expect much, until suddenly, I opened a file titled doc_1.pdf and saw the following. Your husband is cheating on you with me. Yep, Mistress Fortunate put through the order on our online system, but something was off. Fortunate had a very unique name, but this name was Mary, not real name, duh. The phone number and address were also different. She didn't. I immediately brought this to my manager's attention. While I currently have the best boss ever, my first boss was not so good. We'll call her Karen. I told Karen what I thought was going on and said I was uncomfortable approving this order. Karen took the USB and looked the file over. She then asked me if it went against any of our big no's. Basically, anything illegal, copyrighted stuff, sheet music, or original art not signed off by the artist. I said no, but explained that I didn't think the customer listed on the contact info was the customer. If it doesn't go against our policies, we have to produce it. Okay, you're the boss. I'm pretty sure she was only seeing dollar signs for minimum work, but whatever. I pushed the job through to production, though add a note saying under instruction of Karen to cover my own butt. The night shift manager, who is now my current manager, let's call him D, messaged me about the job as it was pushed to them due to the amount of finishing it needed, and I told them the story behind it. D told me that I should not have to deal with the fallout, and told me to take the next 2 days personal time off, and he will make sure to reimburse that time. I gladly did. The fallout. Obviously, this is secondhand information, but things got heated. When my replacement called Mistress Fortunate the next day to tell her her order was ready, the person on the other side was confused. She didn't place an order. My coworker insisted she come to pick it up. A few hours later, a person who was not Mistress Fortunate came in to pick up the order, Mary. I don't remember the exact way it was described to me. It was in sports lingo, but it translated to, she didn't even open the book, she saw the cover page, threw the book at me, and marched out the door. There then proceeded a fight in the parking lot between Mary and Jerk. Mary eventually took the keys to the car and left Jerk out on the sidewalk. Jerk then came into the print shop and started blaming everyone in there for ruining his life. A brochure display was smashed on a self-serve printer, breaking the display and cracking the printer casing. Fortunately still functional. Those things are like Nokia phones. Cops were called, but Jerk was gone by the time they arrived. Karen tried to throw me and the night crew under the bus for the incident. We had a meeting with HR where Karen screwed up and the HR rep had a brain. Well, technically it's not his fault for approving the order. How was he supposed to know it wasn't her? Because he told me he knew it was her. Wait, so he brought this to your attention and you still had him approve the order? Points out the note I placed on the order. Karen opens her mouth and inserts her foot. Come to think about it, I think this started the downfall of Karen as my manager, but I didn't have anything to do with that story, so I'll leave it to the ones who led that coup against her. Why did this story come up years after it happened? Well, my boss was going through files on Karen's old computer, and he found a file named doc_1.pdf. Ay, if this was one that was maybe mailed out to Mary without any interaction from the people at the printing shop, then I could probably get behind it. But Mistress Fortunate, well, she put all of the workers in this place really in danger because she didn't know how that guy was going to react. I mean, I think she's actually kind of lucky that the guy only damaged property and didn't actually harm any of the people working in the store at that time. There were many other ways that Mistress Fortunate could have let Mary know that her husband was cheating on her. I don't think this was the best way. Alright, our first story today comes to us from Cole Carmont. Bleeding IT dry. Malicious compliance in the print hub. Let's jump right in. I currently work in a print hub and mentioned in a previous post that malicious compliance kind of just comes with the job. Here is another one that I just learned the outcome for this week. I had been on medical leave for quite some time. During that time, a number of systems and programs we used changed. In particular, our online systems for business cards and similar products had changed. The way the system was before my leave was that when a customer uploaded the file, the system would slightly stretch the file to include a bleed. If a file was submitted with a bleed, nothing would be done. For those not in the know, a bleed on a print file is an excess of the image in the design that is meant to be cut off. Most business cards have colored blocking for style, and this ensures that there is no ugly, uneven white edge on the finished product. Essentially, it allows the customer to get what they envision. Astute readers would realize our old system could cause issues, however, especially when writing or images are close to borders. Information could be cut off due to being over the bleed line after the image was stretched. As such, we as workers knew that a change was going to happen. This change happened during my medical leave, as the online system was updated to allow more customizations. When the customers uploaded files, they were presented with a digital canvas where they could change their text and images on their file. 2 boxes were presented on this canvas, one box showing the finished size of the product and one showing the bleed we needed to ensure a proper cut. The problem is, the system no longer automatically stretched the provided file to the finished size, and certainly not to the bleed size. The new system allows the customers to properly fit themselves, but rarely do they size it to bleed. As such, when we print and cut the finished product, there is often this ugly white band on 2 of the sides, as the cutting system is all automated, and without those bleeds, there will always be problems. Additionally, our large guillotine cutter is constantly in use for orders that need it, and to reprogram it and interrupt orders to trim a millimeter off every order was unreasonable. My manager, who will be named D, brought this to the attention of the system admins and IT, but was pretty much dismissed. He was told to push those orders that did not have bleed into problem status, and they would take a look at the problem. Also, to send a list of problem orders still not handled at the end of each week. When I returned to work 3 months ago, I was given a rundown of everything that was new, including this new problem. I followed this malicious compliance currently in progress, none the wiser to what D was doing, pushing the orders without bleed into problem status, which was quite a fair amount to be honest. I didn't really think much about it, however. Towards the beginning of this month, D had asked me to scan in February's problem orders, easily 500 orders, ensure each problem was its own separate file, then file them in a filing cabinet out back. I have read and listened to horror stories about office scanning, but I don't really have an issue where I am, as we have high-capacity automated scanners, so this was no issue. I did as I was told, in the folder they told me to put it in, on the shared computer, and then went to file it. There were over thousands of problem orders stuck in limbo due to this bleed issue in this filing cabinet. Not only did this likely make us look bad to head office, but the customers were probably pissed. When I asked D what was going on with this issue, he explained everything and informed me of his plan. It turned out IT intended to do nothing about this bleed problem. They wanted us as production to fix the problem, which meant designing. The design team gets paid a lot more than we in production though, and as we weren't being paid that wage, D was having none of it. He was told each week to send in all orders that haven't been fixed as of yet, so he was. D and the supervisor created a program that would submit each problem order as a ticket to IT, one at a time, at the end of the week. Previously, they had sent everything in as one ticket. This is why they had me scan each problem order as its own file, rather than just a single PDF with everything in it. This program ran on Friday late afternoon, just before IT's weekend started. D knew IT needed to acknowledge all problem tickets before they left the office. Every 15 seconds, a new problem ticket popped up and they needed to acknowledge it, all 500 files, before they left. I don't know exactly how well it worked, but it certainly worked. 2 hours, 5 minutes, after hours at least, depending how fast their PCs are. I did the math, and that's only the stuff that I scanned myself. From my understanding, D and supervisor had also decompiled the files they had already submitted and resubmitted them as well. After the first week, the regional manager, who is a really cool guy, we'll call him Ray, stopped by to check in and asked why IT was cursing D's name, and D explained it. Ray said in no uncertain terms, if they haven't done anything about the jobs by the end of the week, you should follow up. Wink. At the end of the last week, D set up the program to ask for updates on each of the problem jobs, as well as the program to submit new problem jobs from last week, and set it to run. When we came in this Monday, we got an update from IT that the system had been adjusted, and customers should not be able to submit jobs anymore that do not have borders meeting the bleed line. We still have some issues, as reorders can override this fix, but it's been a lot better now, and this week has been extremely productive. D, meanwhile, came into his email having over 20 unread messages, and over 500 junk mail as the spam filter kicked in. Each message was the program's response asking for an update, with the first few responses from IT being, "We are still looking into it," and the later responses simply being the letter A. There is still the matter of the order still stuck in limbo, so there may be an update, but the main compliance has been settled. Now, OP added an edit at the bottom here. It says, Edit 1. The reason why this problem was not fixed before was all the other locations were doing workarounds to fix the problems themselves. We were the only location making a stink about the issue, as the workaround was outside the scope of our paycheck, so it was considered low priority. Still does not excuse them, but they changed their tune in the end. Down in the comment section for this one, there's one from a user called Lo Tessa. It says, "Yes, so satisfying. D is my hero." OP responded to this one and said, "There are horror stories of people coming off leave to new managers and staff, but I am extremely fortunate that all the problem staff ended up leaving my place of work and replaced by a really close-knit crew. Although I am sad my previous manager is gone, D and Ray are absolutely fantastic. Their motto is, no one wants to work in a dull place. As long as your work is done and done correctly, do what you want. Morale is at an all-time high." Another user down below commented with this name that I'm not even going to try to pronounce. It says, "Your workload moving forward will also be lighter as some of the customers who got their time wasted will go somewhere else." OP responded to this one as well and said, "I am willing to bet that a lot of those orders in the system were already complete or canceled. By this story, I'm sure you can tell, IT for this company are not the brightest. In addition to this issue, they also don't properly clear their tickets on their end. When they get new files or fix the issue, a new job ticket is submitted rather than the current job ticket being altered. Then they would need to link the new job ticket and the problem. When the new job ticket gets cleared, the problem ticket is cleared as well. I am processing upwards to 100 jobs a day, so I can't recognize all orders pushed into problem, but as we have not received any consequences or word from head office, I am assuming we were still running the orders at some point and customers receiving their orders even if they weren't clearing from the system. Okay, I can't help myself, but does those white lines on the edges of my business card mean that I'm on the bleeding edge of my field? Okay, something to think about. This is a system that they used to replace a system that was doing an okay job. Sure, it cut off some of their print jobs, but it sounds to me like it was having a lot less problems than the new system was, So when they realized there was a problem with the new system that was causing a massive issue, they should have just rolled back to the old system. It would have been a lot easier until IT or whoever could rewrite that new system to make it work properly. Our next story today comes to us from Scarlet Witch 713. Don't want to follow the rules of the log haul road? Sure, go right on through. Let's jump right in. Longtime lurker, been debating posting this. I tried to keep it short while providing context. For context, I, 27 female, work for a small local security company. We mainly do oil and gas and logging roads. I typically work pipeline security, but I'm between sites at the moment waiting for spring breakup, when the ground starts to thaw and heavy equipment and trucks can't operate because this is swampland. Before breakup, they've got a 24/7 log haul happening on one of the big logging roads in our area. Now, because of this, traffic going against the log trucks is being restricted by us. I sit down at the far end of the log road and control who can go through the wrong way. This is limited to 3 companies and their subcontractors because their sites are close to my end of the road and they don't interfere with log trucks. Any company that is in violation of this rule receives a $10,000 fine and their road use privileges are affected. In this case, they can still only travel one way on the road once breakup hits and the log haul has to stop, until the logging company says otherwise. One company in particular has been one massive pain this whole time. Let's call them Stupid Incorporated for privacy reasons. Now, Stupid Inc. site sits about halfway down the log road. They have to go down to the far end of the road and drive the same direction as the log trucks. Well, they don't bother telling their subcontractors this, so all day, every day, I'm busy turning these guys away. One morning last week, this big pickup rolls up, and I ask the usual of, "Where are you headed?" He gave me the kilometer number of where the site is. It's Stupid Inc. Only he gives me a different company name, a subcontractor. We'll call that one Prick Company. I informed the guy that he couldn't go this way, and he lost it. Starts cursing and swearing, yelling about how it's complete BS, and I shouldn't be allowed to do this. He tells me he's gone this way down the road plenty of times when he's not working, and it's never been an issue. The thing is that private users, so just regular people, are technically allowed. Legally speaking, we can't stop them as roads are public to a degree. There's a whole thing that I'm not going to get into. Private users are allowed to use the road, though we strongly caution against it. Alright then, I'm a private user and you can't stop me. You just told me that you're here for work, but alright, if you say so, you've been warned. And he floors it on down the road. What followed was a 4-day manhunt. I immediately notified the road patrol supervisor, as well as road patrol and my boss. I was asked questions for 4 days while they tried to identify this guy. Because he said he was going to work for Stupid Inc., they got hit with the fine. Of course, this didn't go over well with them either. Next thing I know, the site superintendent is asking me tons of questions about the guy. When I said he worked for Prick Company, well, that didn't go over well. From my understanding, Prick Company was at risk of losing the contract they had with Stupid Inc. over this. Prick Company then started digging around, and I heard they found out who it was, and the guy lost his job over it. The kicker? He wasn't even working for Stupid Inc. that day. The superintendent told me they didn't have Prick Company out working on anything. One of his employees had seen the truck I described way on the other side of Stupid Inc.'s site. He hadn't even stopped there. As far as anyone knows, he actually was there as a private user, and had he just said as much, none of this would have happened. OP added a long edit on after this one. It says, "Apparently I need to clear up a couple of things. It's not like the guy said, yeah, I work for this company but I'm off today. I get that a lot actually and never have an issue with it. The guy specifically told me he worked for Prick Company and was working down at Kilometer X, which was the location for Stupid Inc. I asked him to confirm the company he was headed to work for, and he specifically named Stupid Inc. I told him that company and their subcontractors were not allowed to go that way, and he started yelling and swearing at me. During his hissy fit, he said he's been down that road several times when not working. I told him that private users, so individuals not there on behalf of a company, legally can't be stopped. It's a legal gray area. Yes, it's stupid. but private user equals not there representing a company equals can go. Employees and subcontractors equals there to do work on behalf of a company equals cannot go. After explaining this, he got all smug looking and declared he was a private user. He thought he'd found a loophole. It wasn't like he said, well, I'm actually not here for work today, I just do work for this company. Instead, he was a straight up butthole about the entire situation, and very clearly lied to my face about being a private user. Again, I don't know why he was truly there. I never found out. All I know is he lied to my face, gave me trouble, which is another finable offense actually, but that's a whole other thing, and thought he'd found a loophole. The way the situation itself played out, I guarantee based on the information given to me by him that I was not confused on the matter. Also, when I say 4-day manhunt, what I mean is that it took 4 days for the various companies to figure out exactly who this guy was, as he didn't give me a name. And it's an incredibly common truck description. He didn't vanish into the woods never to be seen again. Apologies for any confusion there. I was never hoping the guy would lose his job. Honestly, I wanted him to get chewed out as a nice bit of karma. This dude was nasty, very colorful language, and at 6:10 a.m., I was so not in the mood to get screamed at. I knew about the fine, which is why I said, "You've been warned," prior to him taking off. I knew that things were going to be ugly for him when the boss got their hands on him. I did not hope or really expect he would lose his job. I can't deny that I do feel a tiny sliver of satisfaction because guys like this need to be taken down several pegs, but I also feel bad that it cost him his job. I believe this would be a case of F around and find out, and I sincerely hope he's learned something from this and will be nicer to people just doing their jobs in the future. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Stabmaster. It says, so he knew that as a private user, you wouldn't be allowed to stop him. Yet for some reason, he thought it was a good idea to lie about why he was there, even though it was completely unnecessary and places liability on himself, his company, and whoever he's out there working for. Sounds like all you did was speed up the natural conclusion of him getting himself fired, and he probably blames you for it entirely. OP responded to this one and said, yeah, I have no idea what the heck was going through his mind, but 100% he blames me. Haha. Those types always blame someone else. Our first story today comes to us from Edic FZ. How not to get new clients, lose existing clients, and get 2 weeks paid time off. Let's jump right in. Some 10 years ago, I was switching jobs after over 7 years at my previous one. I decided I was done with printers and stuff and wanted something new, and I found this company that was supplying CCTV, security, and fire alarms. The company had branches in a few bigger cities in my country. The pay was worse than my previous job, but I figured it's not that bad, and I really wanted to switch jobs. I was contracted for 3 months of a trial period. It's common practice in my country. It's a type of short-term job employment contract, usually 1 to 3 months, that legally has the same terms as a regular job contract, with often some limits on company benefits like private Medicare or gym pass or whatever, after which we'll decide if I'm staying or not. My boss was the regional manager, and I've had a coworker who had been hired earlier. Our branch was open for a few months at this point. Now, it's important to note that the company only dealt in business to business. No retail, we didn't even have a fiscal printer. That is mandatory if you want to do retail sales. So our clients were all big companies, big and small that per company policy specialized in electrical equipment installation. In my country, all businesses are registered in a central database, and the type of stuff done is one of the required stuff from a vast catalog of what can be done commercially. This is tied to the pricing levels. You run an electric company, you get better prices than a flower company, you get the idea. The company had a CRM, customer relationship management software, in which we were required to note every interaction with our clients. When I asked our RM about how it should be kept, a conversation followed. So I need to note only sales or some other stuff as well? everything. Each call, each visit, each sale, and you need to schedule the client's next visit or call. You're to contact each of your clients at least once a week to keep up relations and note everything in the CRM. It's connected to the phone billing, so we know when you've made the calls or not. So I'm supposed to call each client at least once a week for a chat? Yes, and make notes in the CRM. You realize calling that often will annoy most clients? This is the company policy. We want our clients to be cared about, and it's your job to do it. I think everyone knows this is not how you build a positive relation with your potential clients. We're all sick and tired of banks or phone companies calling with another great offer. But fine, it's not my place to argue with company policy. I split with my coworker the clients we had registered, found few more potential contracts on the internet, and for the next few weeks, I'd call each of my clients. First, to introduce myself as their new sales guy, and asked if I can contact them once in a while to check up on things. I didn't note how often I'd check up on things. After a few weekly calls, some clients stopped answering, others blocked me. I noticed I get straight to voicemail, that's pretty obvious. And some got annoyed with the pestering and voiced that with all manner of euphemisms, or straight up insults about wasting their time, and if they want something from me, they'll get back to me. I obviously noted every call in the CRM as explicitly instructed, but just in case someone actually read it, I refrained from citing insults and just went with client angry about too frequent contacts, next contact on this date. That was always in 1 week time. All this didn't win me any favors with the client base, with one exception, but it hardly made a difference. Because we managed to antagonize most of our current and potential clients, we obviously didn't get many sales done, so we weren't allowed to keep many wares on our local stock. This meant that if someone would actually stumble into our store, the shelves would be mostly empty, to the point that putting together a small CCTV setup would be impossible, because we'd have like one DVR, 2 cameras of the same type, and 1 hard drive for the DVR. By that point, we'd get resupply twice a week, so if client ordered something on Thursday, the order would arrive on next Tuesday afternoon at the earliest. This was often unacceptable, so clients would scrap the order. We did some business from time to time, but I'm pretty sure our branch was not making enough even to sustain itself, not to mention making a profit for the company. After about 7 to 8 weeks, I was dialing one of my clients again to check up if he doesn't need anything. Let's call him Red. I was about to hang up with no answer when he did pick it up. Hi, this is Ed from Company X. Can I take a moment? At this point, he furiously interrupted me yelling, "Are you effing serious? I nearly fell off the ladder thinking it's something important, and it's you again? Didn't I effing tell you not to bother me again? Are you effing stupid?" This rant went on for a while. Guy was really creative when it comes to various combinations of insults, something that I think is impossible in the English language. When he finally made a long enough pause for me to chime in, I went with my, at this point, usual explanation. "I'm sorry you find these calls disturbing, but it's our company's policy to keep a close contact with our best clients." Red never actually bought anything. "I don't give an F about your company's policy. Get me your supervisor." "Yes, sir." I happily gave him my boss's rank, name, and phone number. He paused for a moment, I'm guessing to note the info I've given him, and then hung up without a word. I dutifully noted the conversation in the CRM, noting that client angry, requested contact to supervisor, complied. After about half an hour, my RM called me. "Did you call Red today?" I did, like I do on a weekly basis per instructions. "Okay, don't call him again." I'm sure Red gave him a piece of his mind about the company policy. Next week, the one guy that didn't mind my calls strolls into the store and from the door asks, "I hear you're closing up shop?" I look at my coworker with surprised expression. She mirrors it. We asked him where he heard about it, and he answered vaguely, "That's the word around town." We told him that we don't know anything about it. He ordered some basic stuff we as usual didn't have on hand, and left. When I put out the order to arrive in the next shipment, I got a call from the headquarters warehouse. "Hi, did you order X and Y?" I did. "Is there a problem?" "Yeah, kinda. All your deliveries are on hold and we can't ship anything to you." I put the 2 and 2 together. thanked them for the info, hung up, and shared the revelation with my coworker. She contacted the RM to ask about it, and he claimed it must be some kind of mistake and not to worry. The same week on Friday, the RM arrived at 9 o'clock. We opened the store at 8 and went straight to the point. Here are the papers to relieve you from work as of Monday. Today, we pack all of the stock and equipment. At 1400, there will be a truck to pick everything up and the store is done. Work relief is a document that basically tells you that you're still employed as per contract, keeping the pay and social security, but you don't have to actually work, and it doesn't deplete your annual batch of vacation days. We get 20 to 26 days of paid vacation per year. It's used usually when an employee needs to be terminated with notice period, but you don't want to keep him around for the remaining time. In my case, I was 2 weeks until my trial period was to end, so I got the remainder of that time off with pay and the contract would just end. My coworker had 2-week notice period per her contract. I listed the brief time spent at this company as branch closing specialist on my LinkedIn. I think it's more accurate than the technical and sales specialist I actually had on my contract. The company is still there, but scaled back on its branches, and as far as I know, they loosened up their policy a bit. I went on to switch industries once more, cable TV, but got back to CCTV and stuff for the next company where I've spent 4 years, where I had a lot of regular clients and didn't call any of them once without a specific reason. In the comment section for this one, there were a lot of people saying things about the RM not telling them that their branch was closing. Unfortunately, this is just a normal thing in the retail world because if you tell somebody that their branch is closing, you're either going to lose them right away to another employer, or their work productivity is going to go through the floor because they know they're losing their jobs and they just don't give a crap anymore. Going back to the weekly calls though, it sounds to me like that policy was put in place by somebody who's never really worked with clients themselves. It sounds like the company brought in somebody from outside with absolutely no experience who thought, well, we need to build better relationships, so let's bombard them with phone calls. Anybody who's worked in sales or customer relations knows that one of the quickest ways to sour a relationship with a customer is to contact them too many times when they haven't explicitly told you that they need your services right then and there. Our second story today comes to us from the same OP, Edic FZ, You shall not move the printer. Let's jump right in. This is not an epic tale, but still makes me smile when I think about it. Some years ago, I worked in a store that deals with security devices, CCTV, alarms, home automation and stuff. It was part of a larger chain. The headquarters was in a town some 5 hours drive away, and the chain itself was set up in a way that the store manager was, in most cases, on a business-to-business contract with the store chain. My store was a bit different because the guy who hired me was in charge of 2 stores, ours, the smaller one, and another one in his hometown about 1.5 hours drive away. That meant I wasn't directly connected with the chain management structure. This would have consequences later. Now, the store I was working in was managed by a girl, let's call her Barb, that's, and it's important, about 1.7 meters tall, about 5'7" for you Imperial crowd. And what she lacked in height, she made up with character. When she knew something was dumb, she pointed it out loud and direct. If it happened to be a manager or director in the company chain, well crap, he gets blasted in the face both barrels. She was great at her job though, and I liked working with her. She showed some restraint toward customers, but when a Karen showed up, well, we didn't get many Karens in our store. Our manager was also a great guy that always stood up for us, and since he was our employer, he was the buffer between us and the higher-ups. Our store, on the other hand, was the smallest in size from all of the nearly 40 stores across the country. Like literally 40 square meters, including basement storage. But since we often got results rivaling stores twice our size in cities 3 times bigger, we finally got to move to a larger place. We were happy about it for 2 reasons. 1, the new place was 3 times bigger and on 1 level. And 2, it had air conditioning. Our old place barely had any ventilation. When the move was finally approved, we, per the chain company request, needed to get it done in 2 days. So day 1, we pack all our stock, our stuff, PCs, register, documents, etc. in boxes, dismantle the furniture that could be dismantled, and book a van to move all this stuff to the new place. On day 2, we move, with the support of our manager and 3 guys from the chain, 2 of whom were on the company's board. The company was kinda weird in this way. Their job, along with helping with manual labor, was to make sure everything goes smooth and take inventory. Day 1 took about 12 hours. On day 2, we started at 8 AM and got everything moving. It was dark out when we finally got everything set up, after about 12 or 13 hours of work. At this point, we had all of the front-end customer ready, with minor details to go. One of them being where the printer will go. We, me and Barb, wanted it behind our back on a low shelf, easy access. Enter Bob, nearly 1.95 meters, 6.5 feet tall, bulky, bald dude, senior manager and member of the board of the chain company. He argues that the printer should go below the desks. We had 2 large desks making a counter that spanned nearly the width of the store, leaving only a small gap that we used to get out to the front of the store, so the customers won't see it. We noted that the place that he wanted the printer was taken by the trays for all the invoices and other documents we produce in excess on a daily basis. "You can take the paper to the back," Bob says. "After every printout? You serious?" Barb replies. Ever seen a miniature pincher barking up a Doberman? It looked something like this, only the Doberman was as angry as the pincher. They were on each other's throats for a good 10 to 15 minutes. Everyone else was dead tired after what was essentially a full 12 hours of manual labor. This is when my tired mind got the best of me, and I said, "Barb, just let it go. We'll do it his way, and when they leave tomorrow, we'll set it our way." I only realized that I said it out loud when it became dead quiet and everyone stared at me. Bob was pissed. Now, I'm 1.9 meters tall myself, 6'3", but still only a lowly salesman. And I just basically told the board member to suck it. Barb looked at me, then at Bob, and finally at our boss. The moment when our boss said, "See, you have no power here, just leave it," was the moment I realized I was holding my breath. Bob sighed loudly and told us to do whatever, which we did. When I left the company some 3 years later, I got tired of retail, but still remained on good terms with the company. The printer was in the same spot I put it on that day. No one from the chain dared move it. Okay, so I read that whole story, but I'm still focused on one thing here. Where in the world is a 5'7" woman considered short? Where I'm from in Canada, that's probably high average height for a woman here. I honestly couldn't help constantly thinking about that all the way through this story. I guess that's just the way my silly mind works, I don't know. Our last story today comes to us from Lade E. Love. Customers always right? Let's jump right in. So I work as a minimum wage cashier at a discount store. I see a lot of people in a day, especially people who know how to do my job better than me, due to their lack of experience and profound understanding that my job is the easiest in the world. Now, I always shut that crap down, in the classic corporate happy public service employee way. "Well, actually, it makes it a little easier this way, but thank you so much for helping." Like I'm talking a toddler down from an upcoming tantrum, but I don't leave room for arguing. It's almost like I'm playing a character, honestly. It works for me. But I never just let someone do something stupid, like letting them walk out with a bag too heavy without double bagging it, or letting them leave putting their receipt in their bag if it looks like they might want to return it. But not today. It's Saturday, so it's busy. All day, as I would finally get a minute to get my other work done, someone would come up taking forever to consider the impulse buys, while I'm stuck waiting for them at the register getting nothing done. This woman did that, but twice. She got up there, pondered for a minute, got a line behind her, decided to go look at something else. I'm stuck with this line till just before she gets back, and ponders again before finally getting to me. She's your average looking middle-aged soccer mom, but already she's getting on my nerves. But hey, it's Saturday, every customer gets on my nerves, so whatever. She's got a lot of larger but lightweight items with some smaller items like bags of candy and socks. So I'm getting half of it in one large bag, half of it in another large bag. So I go to get the second bag, handing her the first one, when she goes, "No, I don't want a lot of bags. You can fit the rest in there, it's fine. You should ask before getting more bags. It's your job to do things how the customers want and asking. Otherwise, you should just know to do one bag if you can. It's wasteful. I only want one bag." And I thought to myself, wow, it sounds like she's never done retail a day in her life. She must know what she's doing. Now, it's also worth noting that she had a few heavier items. Not many, but a few. They were glass jars of sauces with lots of pigment and staining properties. It's also worth mentioning she was getting some chips that came in bags with pointy, sharper edges that eat bags for breakfast. The bag gets too heavy and they press into the sides at any angle, and that bag is toast. It's also worth mentioning she was getting several white clothes made of very stainable material. Nice clothes. She said they were for an important party she had to go to that night, bragging. Normally, I would double bag, which would keep the sharp corners in check. But she was right. She only wanted one bag, so that must be all she needs. So I get the glass jars in with the clothes, nested in there nicely spaced out, where they wouldn't hit each other with the clothes between them. And the bags on top spread around the top, so it was easier to lift the bag just like she wanted. That darn bag was already looking like it would bust wide open any second when she took it from the counter. Luckily, a line hadn't formed behind her yet, just someone looking the impulse buys over, so I couldn't really step away, but nothing to do but watch where I had a clear view of the parking lot. I watched as she struggled out the two front doors, no automatic, got a quarter of the way to her car when the bag bust. Glass and sauce everywhere. She had like $15 worth, about 5 jars. She struggled to force them back into the bag, hoping she could at least pile them in her arms with the bag holding it together, trying not to cut herself on the glass she had wrapped up. It broke some more. She tried to salvage it and balance it back up. Failed, gave up, grabbed as much of an armful as she could, had to take like 5 trips, her blouse and pants ruined. Maybe after over a year and a half of cashiering nearly every day, I know what I'm doing. Shocker. OP mentioned in the comment section down below that this lady did not come back in to complain or try to return things or put blame on OP for using one bag. It kinda sounds like they put their tail between their legs and left because they knew that it was their problem, and this was exactly what they asked for. Check out all 3 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.